So I think we've been, Lauren, welcome. And I wonder, Kathy, if you could just go down the roll call, if you're able, just to make all of our members on board.
I can do that. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Gary.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Michael.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Faye Ruth.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mark.
Good morning.
Cassandra.
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Matt.
I'm here.
Good morning. Lou.
Good morning.
I'm here.
Right. Dimitri.
Good morning, everyone. This is Dimitri.
Good morning. Lauren.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Nancy.
I'm here, but after the banter on making fun of what people are dressed like, I'm not turning on my video.
Rena.
Yep, I'm here.
Good morning. Everybody's here.
Okay, Lauren, I'll turn over to you as our chair.
All right, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. And it's good to see everyone's faces. It's been a couple of months now. So I will call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the February 13th board meeting. So I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
And I believe that we actually have to do this by roll call. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
All right, so now we just have to go down. And so I will read out the names and you can either give a yay or nay. So Commissioner Anderson,
Yay.
Michael Chernow,
Yay. I was a muted yay. Now I'm an unmuted yay.
thank you. Faber Fisher,
Yay.
Mark Gagne,
Yay.
Cassandra Roeder,
Yay.
with Matt Vino.
I'll abstain because I wasn't a member of the board for that meeting.
Okay. Fair enough. Lou Malzone,
Yay.
Dimitri,
Yay.
and I will vote on behalf of the secretary, Nancy Turnbull,
Yes.
and Rena Verdes.
Yes.
Great. So the motion carries. And the second item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the April 2nd board meeting. So again, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, let's do this again. Gary,
Yay.
Michael,
Yay.
Faye Ruth,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Cassandra,
Yay.
Matt,
Yay.
Lou,
Yay.
Dimitri,
Yay.
yay on behalf of the secretary, Nancy,
Yes.
and Rena.
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries. All right, the next item on the agenda is the executive director's report. So I will turn it over to Louis.
Thank you, Lauren. And I want to wish a good morning and my deepest wishes for each of you, your loved ones, and members of the public that may be watching, that you be safe as the statewide community continues to grapple with COVID-19. We support the health of our residents through our core mission of helping residents find and keep affordable insurance coverage. And Audrey will have a presentation this morning on the several measures that have been taken and are currently being taken to do that. Some members of the Connector continue in a supportive role for COVID-19 contact tracing activities each day continuously since March 24th. We are dedicated to honoring the flexibility granted Connector to support contact tracing efforts in the Commonwealth I think we have all come to a deep awareness of how crucial contact tracing is as a tool to contain infectious disease spread, particularly as Massachusetts looks towards reopening. And the efforts of DPH, the local boards of health, the academic schools of public health, Community Tracing Collaborative, and the administration's COVID-19 Command Center make progress daily in a holistic approach to the tracing and testing capacity Massachusetts needs to be safe. Through all of this, and not to mention the need to make all agency work remote, the work of the Health Connector remains focused. As you will hear today, we are resolute in delivering a health insurance exchange available to everyone and ready to support those who need health insurance, especially during a public health crisis and an economic downturn. Audrey will speak about the policy changes and initiatives we are using to see that uninsured and newly unemployed residents know coverage is available through the Health Connector, and that current members know the steps they need to take to maintain affordable coverage during this difficult period. We also come to you today with a proposed final version of the Health Connector's program regulations to ensure the exchange's programmatic regulatory structure is up to date, comprehensive, and works for everyone. Despite the economic realities of the pandemic, we continue to make coverage available through Health Connector for business, and despite the economic news, continue to see stable enrollment with some small growth. And our top priority task, our overhaul of the Connector's customer experience, continues. Despite the challenges we have faced, the project remains at this point on schedule for launch on July 6th. Our CXP project is a large-scale project with literally thousands of details, and every single person in our organization is working on it at some level. I will be forever amazed at the commitment our team has shown throughout, and so thankful for the hard work and dedication that has gone into the CXP project. I look forward to continuing to update you through our July launch, and I want to thank you for your support and input as we near completion of this project. And I look forward to your thoughts on this and the rest of the items today as we go through the agenda. Finally, I am profoundly grateful to my team for the late nights, lost weekends, and responsiveness to unyielding demands that have been required during this time. And with that, I will close my remarks and be open for questions or issues before we start the presentations. And if there are none, then I will hand back to our chair.
Great. Thank you, Louis. All right, so the next item on the agenda is a presentation that Audrey will be giving around the efforts to preserve and expand health coverage during the COVID-19 emergency. So,
Great.
Audrey.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Just bear with me as I move into slideshow. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. And some of you have heard this, but there is a tree removal company in my neighbor's yard right now, so you may hear some chainsaws in the background, so bear with me. The purpose of this presentation for the board this morning is really to give an overview of the work the Connector has been engaged in over the last 2 months during the COVID-19 pandemic in response to it from a coverage perspective. I don't need to tell the board how this particular pandemic really cuts into 2 key components of the Connector's mission as it relates to the fact that our work is really about promoting healthcare access, which has never been more important in the context of a public health emergency, as well as the financial security that comes with health coverage for people. And particularly as we're facing turbulence in the economy right now, that's a core core focus for us in terms of preserving that for the Massachusetts population. So what we'll walk through today is the work we're doing to help existing Health Connector membership stay in their coverage, and also to do work to go find people who may newly need health insurance through the Health Connector as a result of the economic situation. So moving into supports for existing membership and the 300,000 or so individuals across the Commonwealth that we cover, of course, a guiding principle for us is to try to do everything we can to help our members maintain coverage so that they can access COVID testing and treatment as needed, as well as their other healthcare needs. Of course, the Commonwealth has a lengthy history of promoting coverage all the time through our individual mandate, our culture of coverage, all that work we've all been at for almost 15 years as a Commonwealth. This priority is even more important now. So with respect to our existing membership and steps we've taken to do what we can to keep people in coverage, the board will recall that in April, we took the extraordinary step of postponing terminations for any members that would have otherwise been terminated due to non-payment. And we saw this as an extraordinary but appropriate step as people were getting their legs underneath them in these new circumstances and giving people time to do things like update their applications if they had lost income, so that we could take steps to support people into the affordable coverage that they're eligible for and need. Looking to the month of May for May coverage and beyond, the Connector has stood up a number of other tools to help people preserve coverage. The Connector and Mass Health are continuing to pause member terminations due to failure to submit requested documentation. So that's an ongoing step aimed at preserving people's coverage. We have sped up the timeline in our system for when people report changes with respect to their income that might move them into lower cost coverage. Historically, if somebody submitted a change like that after the 23rd of the month, it could take until not the following month on the 1st of that month, but the following month after that, if they had kind of missed that window. We've accelerated that timeline so that people can move into lower cost coverage more rapidly. We're working very, very closely with our navigators and assisters, also in partnership with Mass Health, to provide unique support to those individuals and entities that are providing support to our members. So are doing informational calls with those entities and have made new flexibilities available with respect to electronic or verbal signatures and the like to just continue to facilitate the important work they do for our members and the public. We are also doing assertive messaging to members and have taken steps with respect to hardship waivers, which I will go into here. So our kind of term of art is report a change for when somebody has a change in income or circumstance that may change their subsidy eligibility. So that could mean moving from unsubsidized coverage into subsidized coverage for the first time. That could mean somebody moving from a less subsidized ConnectorCare plan into a more highly subsidized ConnectorCare plan, or it could mean someone moving from ConnectorCare into Mass Health and so on. So we have really stepped up the assertiveness and intensity and frequency of our messaging to our members about how important it is to right away update their information. We have seen that that's important, of course, because it reduces financial strain for people who are undergoing financial duress right now and need that assistance. And of course, it increases the chances people can maintain their own coverage because they can afford to continue to make those payments.
Audrey, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Lauren, how do you want to handle questions? Do you want us to raise our hands or gesticulate or what?
Just go for it, Nancy.
You've used on this slide, and at least in talking about the previous slide, assertively reminding. It sounds like frequency is part of like, what does that mean exactly? Assertively reminding people.
It's a frequency and it's a placement in messaging to members in terms of it really being like we've messaged to members just about reporting changes. That's not something historically we've done as much. It's sort of in normal circumstances, something that's been embedded in kind of omnibus communications to people. Here now we're doing direct member messaging that is saying, have you lost income? Have you lost a job? We've been doing automated phone calls to people, reminding them to update their information if they've had a change. So it's kind of, it's a frequency, but it's also kind of a centralization of placement in member messaging about it being worthy of its own kind of headline, if that makes sense.
And do we know how many members we would have terminated had we not had the new policies in place?
For April coverage with respect to the pausing of terminations for non-payment, my understanding is it was about 14,000 people, but I can check the specifics and confirm. So in terms of that report of change message, we've seen that pay dividends. We've seen a very material increase compared to this time of year last year, for example. We've had 13,000 Health Connector members update their information and move into lower cost plans. That's about 235% higher than we saw at this time last year, just in terms of member movement. We've also seen about 11,000 members update their information and move into Mass Health. So this is a space we'll continue to watch really closely and keep the board apprised. An additional tool that we have been working on, the board may be familiar.
I'm sorry to interrupt this, Mike.
Sure.
By lower cost plans, you mean moving down a tier, like silver to bronze, as opposed to a different plan in their tier?
So it means within ConnectorCare, someone moving, for example, from a plan type 3 plan to a plan type 2A plan, which means they move down the affordability schedule and have access to a lower cost base contribution. So it's not about metal tiers.
And higher out of pocket. And higher out of pocket. That was the question I was kind of asking.
No, lower premiums and lower out of pocket. Does that help? I'm happy to provide more.
So you have a different carrier with maybe a different network, for example.
If somebody moved from non-ConnectorCare into ConnectorCare, they may need to select a different carrier. But it could, if somebody is already in ConnectorCare, it could mean that they move from having their lowest cost plan being, say, $123 a month to $23 a month.
Because their income has changed.
That's correct.
I got it.
And so Audrey, just for clarification, if someone is in ConnectorCare, can they keep the same plan and have the affordability improved on the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. That's a great question. Any other questions before I move into hardship waivers? Okay. So the board may be familiar that through its program regulations, which Andrew will be speaking to later in the meeting, the Connector has had long-standing authority to provide what we call premium hardship waivers for ConnectorCare members. And these are waivers for people who are experiencing extraordinary circumstances. So it could be somebody who is homeless, has had a utility shutoff notice, is experiencing domestic violence, has had a material increase in personal expenses due to illness, or a family member's illness, things of that nature. What we've done in light of COVID is sort of clarify some of the types of circumstances that might be happening for people right now as a result of the pandemic, make them more clear to members who may be experiencing those kinds of situations, and also made it easier for people to request them. Previously, this had been something people would need to call and call our call center about. We've created a web-based form that's a little bit more clear for people. And have communicated about that both to members directly if they're in those circumstances, and making sure they know that that capability is available to them if they meet particular criteria, and of course have educated assisters, navigators, constituent services staff, and elected officials office, who are of course fielding a lot of questions from the public across the board right now. So that's a place as well that we're working to make sure our members have tools if they are coming across hard times that are impeding their ability to pay premiums, stay in coverage if they are going through serious hardships as a result of COVID.
I'll ask another question. I mean, it sounds like we're doing a lot and all of this is really wonderful to hear. And, you know, some of what we're doing is in situations that are unique to COVID, but other things, we're kind of more assertively doing certain things in situations that have always arisen. Mm-hmm. So I think there's an opportunity to try to figure out how much difference does some of the more assertive messaging and outreach and things actually make in terms of conversion rates and other things. So I know there's a lot going on, but at some point it would be interesting to try to tease apart are there things we're doing now that we actually should continue to do?
Mhm.
Because they actually really make a difference, even in a better and, you know, less extraordinary time. So I hope we'll be able to sort of glean the learnings of that. I think that's happening at every workforce. I know it's happening at mine. We're really trying to focus on, we've had to change lots of what we're doing, and some of which we actually want to keep doing because it's forcing us to do things that maybe we never would have done, but we're discovering actually are really good changes to make.
That's great. No, I think that's great. A great suggestion, Nancy. And I think we're thinking about that as well. I think we've always tried to think about program and policy approaches that consider people in the worst off circumstances, just to ensure we have like a very safe floor for people. And if this particular circumstance we're all in is putting more people in that situation, it's helping to focus our thinking on that. So thanks for that suggestion. We'll certainly keep you posted and engaged with the board on those important points.
Hi, Audrey. This is Dimitri. Just to dovetail on Nancy's point, are we measuring the penetration rate of the outbound text messaging to our constituents?
Yes, I don't have those numbers in front of me. My understanding is we've had pretty strong kind of open or engagement rates with respect to the communications we've been sending out, emails and phone calls and other, but I can look into the specific numbers of it. And I think the fact that we are seeing such a material uptake in member movement suggests to me it's getting through either those messages themselves or our members are really well educated about the program they're in and how they need to operationalize it to maximize their own benefits. But I'll look into those specific statistics for you and circle back.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit. So that really kind of comprises the work we've been doing in our individual market to help protect coverage. Heather will speak in her presentation about some of the efforts we're taking with small groups enrolled through Health Connector for Business during this time as well. But shifting gears to kind of looking to the outside world across Massachusetts right now. It comes as no surprise, of course, to the board that our state and country are facing serious economic tumult and upheaval. The numbers of people filing for unemployment are, of course, staggering. And kind of wrapped up in that for the purposes of the Health Connector and other exchanges, of course, is really an attempt to understand how many of those people who may be losing jobs right now are also losing job-based health insurance coverage. And of course, exchanges are very well positioned to kind of catch and support and cover those individuals who may be losing employer-sponsored insurance. Over just the last week or two, there's been a number of national estimates, including some state-by-state projections around numbers of people who will be losing ESI if haven't already, and how many of them may be eligible, for example, for exchange coverage versus Medicaid coverage and the like. Some of this is hard to wrap one's arms around because there are variables like COBRA, including pending legislation in the House right now that could further subsidize COBRA for longer periods of time and things of that nature. But I think it stands to reason that there will likely be material numbers of people who newly need exchange coverage, including through the Health Connector. And there's some kind of historical relevance here for the connector in that board members may be aware, prior to the Affordable Care Act, our Department of Unemployment Assistance in Massachusetts actually administered an insurance program for people on unemployment called the Medical Security Program. It was sunsetted in 2014 with the understanding that subsidized exchange coverage through the Health Connector would really become the natural place for people on unemployment. So I think we take our role in this space very seriously and our responsibility to make sure we're reaching and intaking that population as well.
Audrey, can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
I've been, as you can imagine, listening to a lot of webinars, trying to get up to speed on everything that's happening. And there's a lot of discussion about the taxability and the impact of unemployment insurance benefits and how that is still considered income. So are we kind of preparing for like multiple waves of people to be coming in?
Yes. So yes to that in terms of, you know, who's eligible for exchange coverage. And you may also be referring to, there was, I'll call it a wrinkle in the CARES Act in terms of there was a federal augmentation of unemployment income of $600 for people across the country receiving unemployment. So people in Massachusetts benefit from that additional assistance, which is great. It was exempted from for eligibility purposes for people on Medicaid, but not exempted for people who qualify for advanced premium tax credits through exchanges. So there's an incongruence there that's kind of messy, and we're working on and have actually issued, and it's on our website, communications to our members in terms of the fact that unfortunately they need to incorporate that into their income information in their application through us, which is both complicated from a member experience perspective. It also has the unfortunate benefit of potentially bumping some people out of their subsidy eligibility, or it sort of offsets it, not in the direction we would want to see it go. So it's kind of a challenging area, but we have been working on member communications to support people through that. And there's also national dialogue and congressional discussions about whether that should be fixed and made consistent between Medicaid and exchange populations as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure, of course, it's a great question. Thanks for raising it. So in terms of outreach we're doing to newly uninsured individuals, newly unemployed individuals, you may have seen them, we are running digital ads, we're on the radio, we're doing our ethnic and immigrant focused media work in terms of ads to raise people's awareness about Health Connector coverage and really tailoring it to the current circumstances we know a lot of people are in with respect to potential recent unemployment. We've created social media toolkits, which we've shared extensively with sister agencies, elected officials, business groups, and others. So you can see there in the lower left-hand corner, we've been fortunate to receive a lot of amplification across the board from elected officials, business groups, and others. So we'll continue that work as well. We've
Audrey,
also, yeah.
Are we making any new funds available to community-based organizations that I'm sure are overwhelmed with trying to help protect, preserve, get people into new coverage? And do we have any partners who are helping out in that, particularly with funding support to partner organizations that I'm sure are being swamped?
So it's a great question. At this point, it hasn't been something that we've created additional grant or funding opportunities for. We of course have our existing contracts and funding relationships with navigators. We have a program with Health for All. But I think as we look ahead to the next, for example, Navigator grant cycle, which is coming up for this summer, I think all those considerations are very much in the mix, as we know there is a lot of new work going on. So
I mean, I'm sure, for example, well, I've not talked to Healthcare for All about it. I'm sure their helpline must be overwhelmed. So
yeah, they do a lot of volume.
Both from the state, but as we might talk about a little later, it's not that there are those without resources in the healthcare community who could make contributions to those types of efforts at the moment. If we want to continue shared responsibility for trying to keep people in coverage as we have for many years here.
And Nancy, in our fiscal 21 budget, we are proposing a material increase in the Navigator budget, but if there's something we need to do sooner, we'll also evaluate that.
Yeah, I think that's great, Louis, and it's great that that's in the budget starting in July, but it's a long time and a lot of suffering between now and then, and a lot of demands being put on, lots of our partner organizations. So, again, I know this is an extraordinary time and everyone's working hard on lots of fronts, but I'm sure that must be an area of critical need.
Thanks, Nancy. So just wanted to touch on a few things that our partners at the Department of Unemployment Assistance have been fortunate to be able to help us with. So they have incorporated information about Health Connector coverage in what's called rapid response materials, which are materials and resources provided to businesses that are laying individuals off, and the resources for those laid off individuals. Our information has been incorporated into the 211 hotline that residents of the Commonwealth may be calling for information right now. Importantly, DUA was able to add a link at the end of the online unemployment income application that links out to the Health Connector. So that's great. We're able to sort of catch people's eyes as they're engaged in that, that important application process. And the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development has also been fantastic partners in sending out information to mass hire centers and others and helping us get the word out to people who may newly be in need of the Health Connector. We have also been partnering with the employer community directly. We have created educational resources that they can push out to member employers and those employers' employees or former employees, as the case may be, working on very clear, clean messaging for people who, again, newly need to learn about Health Connector coverage, deadlines, how to apply, how does this compare to COBRA. We've created comprehensive FAQs for people who are weighing their options. So you'll see a link here where we've created kind of one common landing page with all that information for people who are going through this. And we've been really fortunate with our employer community in Massachusetts, who we have a long history with for all kinds of other policy and program reasons, have been extremely responsive and generous with their time, both in helping push these resources out, but also having great conversations with us about what they're seeing in the field in terms of the choices businesses are facing, so that we feel very informed about what's going on out there. So that's been great. And of course, we're keeping those materials available in multiple languages with an eye towards immigrant populations. The board knows we have had a special enrollment period open, which we've been very grateful to do, which has been available for people who are uninsured to come into coverage. And we've been grateful to work with the Division of Insurance on making that, that special enrollment period available in a parallel fashion for off-exchange populations as well. So thank you to Commissioner Anderson and his team on that. This has been really useful because although people who, for example, may be losing job-based coverage, per the ACA, they can get into coverage for 60 days after losing that coverage. That's kind of a clunky message, and it's actually been very helpful, I think, for us to be able to just say, you know, enrollment is open and available. So that's been very useful. In terms of people coming in through that COVID SEP, as we've been calling it, there's been about 8,000 people who've enrolled through that special enrollment period. That's not the totality of people who have enrolled for April and May. People have come in through other special enrollment period triggers like losing employment-based income or other life changes. But with respect to those 8,000 people who came in specifically through that SEP, our hypotheses were that that could help draw in some of the people who had been sitting on the sidelines of coverage, potentially for affordability or other reasons. And our data indicates that that is true in terms of who we've gotten. It's been younger adults. It's been people who are more likely to be ConnectorCare eligible. People who aren't ConnectorCare eligible are gravitating towards bronze plans, which suggests that they're probably price sensitive and might have been again, kind of sitting out of coverage for affordability concerns, but now want to make sure they're at least getting something, and are more likely to live in cities and towns with higher incidences of uninsurance. So we will continue to watch that space and keep you apprised.
Audrey, are any states, including us, giving any consideration to extending the open enrollment, special open enrollment periods? That's one question. Then the second, you know, as you know, there's a lot of confusion about the public charge rule and a lack of understanding of buying through exchanges does not bring one into the realm of that. And I'm wondering what we're hearing, either we or sister agencies, about that, and if, like, what kind of messaging we're trying to continue to do about that.
So Nancy, on the first topic, we are examining that. We'd like to act in concert with directions at Mass Health, and are looking to assemble input on that before making a recommendation to the Secretary, but we are examining the extension of that period.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
And with respect to the second question, yes, I mean, public charge has been top of mind for us for a long time, of course, just in terms of all sorts of enrollment impacts and coverage impacts. You may have heard a few months ago, Homeland Security put out guidance indicating that testing for COVID would not count towards a public charge determination for someone, situated such that that would be a factor for them. I'm not sure how helpful that's been or not. So we've included that information in messaging we've provided. But I do think it's kind of in the swirl of confusion for people, and it's something we continue to worry about. We've continued to monitor enrollment trends with respect to immigration status, and have continued to not see an impact there in terms of there being higher rates of termination for immigrants or lower immigration sort of inflow to the connector. It doesn't mean that there's not issues and confusion and concern out there, but just in terms of what we've seen in the aggregate in terms of our enrollment, we're not seeing that at this point. One thing I am aware of in terms of immigrant populations that might be concerned about public charge or people that are have different immigration statuses is actually the importance of the off-exchange special enrollment period, because there are immigrants that cannot purchase coverage through the Health Connector if they're not considered lawfully present, but they can directly from a carrier off-exchange. So that's been important as well. So again, a key role that the DOI's guidance on off-exchange coverage plays a key role there. But we'll continue to watch all of that, certainly. So just very briefly wrapping up, again, we're continuing to see high levels of intra-membership movement, which I think is encouraging based on what we know is happening in the economy. So people are using the exchange as it's designed to be used, to be a flexible, responsive sort of financial support to people's coverage. We're going to continue to do everything we can to protect people's coverage with all the tools we have, hardship waivers, et cetera. Continuing to do everything we can to try to reach out to people who newly need Health Connector coverage due to losing job-based coverage and the like. We have not seen a huge spike yet in terms of new enrollments, but are sort of expecting that could be to come given what we know is going on in the economy, and certainly we'll keep the board apprised. We are working with the Division of Insurance and Commissioner Anderson's team, our colleagues at CHIA and at Mass Health to try to understand in real time what's happening with coverage shifts within the Commonwealth. So everybody can be apprised of that, and specifically for the connectors purposes, so we can make sure we're stepping in exactly where those gaps might start to occur, so that we can help prevent uninsurance and gaps in coverage, and do that in a data-driven way as well. So we'll continue to keep the board apprised on all of the above, and I'm happy to take any questions. Okay. Well, thank you all, and I will stop.
Thank you, Audrey.
Share.
It sounds like there's a lot of wonderful work going on, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your
How much you all have done remotely with all that's going on.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say. Well, I'll relay that to the team. We have a great group of people working on all this stuff and taking it extremely seriously.
Thank you, Audrey. Really a tremendous amount of work, and we're grateful for all that you're doing on this front.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the Health Connector for Business FY21 contract with DC Health Benefits Exchange, which is before the board today for a vote, and we will hear the presentation from Heather.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Bear with me for 1 second. Great. Okay. Good morning, members of the board. Today, I will be providing an update on how the Health Connector is assisting small businesses during the current financial crisis and healthcare crisis that we're all facing. Excuse me. Additionally, I will be asking the board to approve a 2020 budget with our vendor, DC HBX. The budget is consistent with last year's approved 2020 budget. Small businesses are facing unprecedented economic disruption due to COVID-19. The Health Connector is helping small businesses by extending payment deadlines, providing resources and information, continuing to engage and train brokers, and providing affordable coverage options. The Health Connector is providing small businesses with an additional 30 days to pay their invoices. This payment extension mirrors carriers' practices off exchange and aligns with the Division of Insurance guidance. The Health Connector is increasing telephonic outreach to small businesses that become delinquent. Additionally, we do not process terminations for non-payment of premium automatically. Rather, we manually review and process terminations for groups who have failed to pay. This helps us ensure that small businesses are provided ample opportunity to pay or seek alternative options before coverage is terminated. We are providing small businesses information on individual coverage as well through the Health Connector, because often small businesses who historically get coverage through employers don't know where to find coverage through the individual market. In many cases, employers who have access to COBRA, that can be very expensive. So the individual options through the Health Connector are a great alternative in some instances. Okay, and this is a view of our current membership as of May 1st. And overall, our membership has remained relatively stable. We've seen a slight uptick in member level terminations. We had 196 terminated members in April, but the terminations on average are not that much higher than what we have seen historically. And only 4 groups have proactively called to terminate their coverage, stating COVID-19 as a reason for termination. We continue to monitor enrollment trends very closely day to day, and we'll keep the board abreast of any sharp decreases in enrollment. In this view here, this is the group count. The previous slide was the member level count. The Health Connector team is also providing additional support to small businesses through active engagement and informational services and resources. First, beginning in March, we provided additional training to our frontline contact center representatives. This training helps representatives direct small businesses on where to find information and resource, such as SBA's Paycheck Protection Program and how former employees can access individual coverage if needed. Today, we're actually hosting a seminar for small businesses, chambers, and brokers. The seminar will focus on affordable coverage options available through Health Connector for Business, but also the full suite of non-group options that are available to individuals as well. Often, employers and individuals who have historically obtained insurance through an employer are not familiar with the individual benefits available through the Health Connector. Thus, it is important that we educate them on non-group options available as well, in addition to HCB. We also have a formal partnership with the U.S. Small Business Administration, so we'll be providing a few updates today for our partners there. And already we have more than 150 people registered for today's session, so we'll report back on how that goes. Also, we know that some employers may want to continue to offer employer-sponsored coverage at this time, but they may be looking for more affordable coverage due to financial hardships. Although it has always been available but not highly publicized, groups can change their plan offering mid-year if they desire a different carrier or a different choice model. If groups do decide to do this, the mid-year change would reset the benefits and it would change the effective date of the coverage. And lastly, we are in constant communication with our groups, partners, chambers, brokers, and we will provide updates as necessary and may have other sessions in a few months or over the course of the year. Our brokers continue to be critical in helping to engage the small business community. New brokers continue to be interested in learning about HCB and they want to get trained in the platform. Brokers see HCB as a way to promote affordable coverage to their clients during this time. During March and April, we held 18 one-on-one training sessions and held a refresher training that was attended by over 50 brokers. Additionally, as most brokers are not well-versed in the Health Connector's individual and family offerings, we have provided educational materials about the individual market for clients of the brokers who may need that option right now. Our certified brokers are trained to help employers find affordable coverage options, and our brokers are well-positioned to assist small businesses navigate through the host of options available through the Health Connector. Given the economic downturn we are facing, we were anticipating little to no new membership growth, but it turns out the Health Connector for Business continues to be a safe landing place for small businesses who want to offer their employees affordable coverage. Over March and April, the Health Connector for Business enrolled 479 new members across 84 groups. And for June, we have over 124 new members who have shopped for coverage. We actually are only forecasted 150 prior to the COVID crisis, so we're pretty surprised at how many businesses are interested in signing up for new coverage. We know that 46% of groups who responded to our survey between January and April reported that they did not previously have coverage. And anecdotally, many of our brokers who are bringing on new groups for June are indicating that their clients are interested in the Health Connector specifically because they are seeking affordable coverage due to COVID. And given the economic constraints, we were interested in identifying which industries are joining HCB at this time. The top 5 industries, as you can see here, are trade and construction, business services, which are your administrative white-collar jobs, health services. So we brought on a number of urgent care center and doctor's office over April and May. The third category here is engineering, accounting, research, which is another sort of broad catch-all of professional white collar. And lastly, real estate. So we're closely monitoring the activity of new sales and all memberships in general, but it appears that the value proposition of HCB remains solid for small businesses that are seeking high value, affordable coverage during these unprecedented circumstances. So we wanted to share some positive feedback in these generally negative times of what we're hearing from our brokers and employer groups. One of our very active brokers, her name is Jill Goldman, you see her picture here. She recently extolled the value of the choice models for her clients. She especially likes the one-level options where employees can pick across carriers within a metal tier. And businesses are also reporting high levels of service, and they note that the platform offers unique value to their employees. Okay. So actively monitoring the service levels with our vendor partner, DCHBS, is key to high levels of satisfaction. It is imperative that calls are answered promptly and service issues such as billing or enrollment questions are resolved quickly and accurately. The average call abandonment rate for 2020 thus far is 2.1%, which is well below our target of 5%, which means that calls are answered very quickly when people need help. Additionally, our inventory of customer service and IT development tickets are at an all-time low. And on a weekly basis, we meet with staff at DC and with their vendors to review inventory and escalated cases. And just as a note for the board, all of DC staff and their contractors, including their customer service folks, have been working fully remote for about 2 months. Okay. So this slide here reviews the current FY 2020 budget compared to the proposed FY 21 budget. Last summer, this board approved an approximate $4.4 million budget. And at the moment, we are expected to come in under budget for the year. For fiscal year 2021, we are proposing a budget that mirrors last year's approved budget of $4.4 million. Any questions before I move to the board vote on this?
Heather, oh,
Sure.
Go ahead. Sorry, Rena, go ahead.
Heather, why does the budget need to be the same level as it was in 2020 if you're not building things anymore?
So we actually are building some things. So in our budget, you see here, last year, we spent close to $600,000 on customizations, or yeah, just under. So we do have some customizations that we are budgeted for next year as well. Things that streamline the system. There's some manual processing that happens that causes downstream impacts. So we are making improvements to the system this year.
Heather, along the line of Rena's question, can you differentiate for me customization versus services that are incorporated in the existing contracts that we have? Because we do have maintenance contract on everything that we have in place.
Yeah, so when we say customizations, what we're talking about are actual changes to the code. So changes to the system that we bought from DC to make it better or customize it for the Massachusetts market. And a lot of the work that we're planning for 2021, some of it is member facing, so some enhancements to the user experience, but a lot of it is to introduce processes that limit manual work. So the idea is that it does have an upfront cost, but in years to come, that will pay off because there's less manual interventions and development work that needs to be done to resolve tickets.
So is all this customization moving forward a reflection of action that was missing with regard to the initial specs and use case identification?
No, Dimitri, I think it's a question of, all of these projects are a balancing of time versus minimum viable product versus improvement over time. And so, we went live viable product. But there was a pretty substantial queue of roadmap customizations that we felt would both make the system better. These are things like the anonymous shopping, akin to what brokers have on the exchange, on the small group exchange. As Heather mentions, a lot of things are done manually now, and that manual effort results in errors that we don't need to be seeing, and it results in pretty high labor fees. And so I think, as Heather said, the focus this year is on really automating some of those manual components.
And Louis, with regard to the budget and some of the work that's being done right now to more or less encapsulate some of the manual operative functions into the system, does that mean that once we go through this milestone starting next year, that will be reflective of the budget in terms of seeing a decrease in that number, so that we'll be more in the maintenance mode with minimal development?
You know, Dimitri, I'll be honest in saying we haven't modeled next year yet, but I'm hearing clearly the board message regarding the expectation for automation savings on this. I would just note that we're handling substantially higher membership this year than last, as a for instance. And so the, you know, the not insignificant price per member, I'm not saying it's at a point where it needs to be yet, but it's declining as we go forward. But I think what we will aim to do is, as we think through the 22 budget, if this budget is approved, we'll be really looking to trim the sails on further automation if it doesn't save out your money.
Thank you, Louis. And I know that you and your staff are doing a wonderful job as far as that issue is concerned. It's not a situation that we want you to stop automating, but from my perspective, I just want to make sure that we are incorporating as much of that into the current budget cycle as possible, so that moving forward, we can start seeing some return on those dollars and not having to spend as much. Understood, and it's really an important set of questions. So thank you, Rena and Dimitri.
Heather, I have a question and a comment. First is I continue to hear very positive feedback from the broker community about the support and the work that you're doing. So, you know, well done to your team, and I'll just express that gratitude on behalf of that community. One of the things I know that's a very big challenge for every small employer is, you know, the opportunity to tap into resources. And I know from our experience that you're doing, and your report out shows that people are having inbound phone calls on PPP, right? So, but also that they're also probably inquiring, and I want to ask, are they trying to understand the differences between a furlough, a layoff, a RIF? Like, where does where's our line drawn between labor and insurance? We found that in our business that, you know, some of these questions are moving into areas of labor law.
Right.
As you know, right, furloughs, this is one of the big things I don't think is being talked about with unemployment as an example. While the unemployment numbers are staggering, the reality is, according to the Wall Street Journal earlier this week, 80% of the people who have now filed for unemployment have been furloughed, right? Meaning that they still are on the benefits. They still have a job to go back to. So I'm not so sure we'll see a tremendous amount of volume as a result of that, but not to get off point to my question. My question really is, are we tracking the types of inbound calls that come in? Are we looking at the types of questions that are being asked to then be able to provide resources to the small business community where they can get their answers, the answers to their questions?
That's exactly right. So we are specifically tracking the types of calls that are coming in as they're related to COVID or groups that are struggling. We have set up, you know, special ticks in our Salesforce system to take those calls and then respond to them. Of course, our contact center folks aren't able to answer labor law type questions, but we've been working with the brokers directly about some of those issues, and as necessary, we'll point them back to say, maybe you need to talk to your attorney, or for the most part, it's really just talk to a broker. So the vast majority of the calls that are coming in are brokered calls. So we're working closely with them to give them the right resources. And as I mentioned today, we have a seminar that's going to be attended not only by small businesses, but by brokers and chambers. So we'll be talking about some of those resources today as well.
That's great. I think to the extent we're able to provide, vetted resources for people to go talk to, so they're going to get quality advice. I do think that that's something we can do to help the small business community.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the presentation? Great. Okay. So, all right. So I'm bringing a board vote to you all. The Health Connector asks that the board authorize the Health Connector to enter into an amendment with the DC HBX Exchange Authority to support the Health Connector business platform during fiscal year 2021 for an estimated amount of $4.399994 as described herein.
Great. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, let's go through the roll call. Gary,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Cassandra,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Lou, Lou, do we have you?
I had that on mute.
That mute button. Okay, thank you. Dimitri?
Yes.
All right. Lauren, yes. Nancy?
Yes.
And Rena?
Yes.
Great. The motion carries. Thank you all, and thank you, Heather, for the presentation. All right, the next item on the agenda is the final recommendation for amendments to the final program regulation, which is also before the board for vote today and will be presented by Andrew Egan.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today, we'll be revisiting the changes to the Health Connectors program regulations that we proposed last fall, provide you with a summary of the comments we received during the subsequent public comment period, and describe the changes we made in light of those comments to produce a final set of regulations. So as you may remember, in October of 2019, we brought the board a suite of proposed changes to the ConnectorCare regulations intended to update and modernize those regulations, incorporating lessons learned since the creation of the program. By and large, the proposed changes were not intended to change the way we do things, but rather to reflect and clarify existing policies and operational processes. Today, I will be asking you to approve the final amendments to the regulations, which span the 5 broad topic areas listed here: expanding the scope beyond ConnectorCare, clarifying eligibility effective dates, updating appeal and hearing language, updating premium processes, and generally cleaning up the regulations. More specifically, to review the changes we proposed last fall, we proposed amending the regulations to update their scope beyond ConnectorCare to include our other programs for non-group, small group, and dental coverage in order to improve transparency and accountability to all our members and fill the regulatory void left by the repeal of federal small group exchange regulations in 2018. We also proposed clarified language around eligibility effective dates to better reflect federal rules in the way we implement them, hopefully reducing confusion and providing clearer expectations for members around what will happen when eligibility changes occur. Further, we updated appeals language to incorporate all programs for which we provide appeals. This included incorporating more clearly federal rules around exchange appeals as well as our own existing appeals practices and policies. We also proposed more detail on processes related to hardship waivers for premium and incorporated one substantive amendment that would allow for flexibility on the due date for reinstatement payments after someone has been terminated. This flexibility would allow us to better serve members trying to reinstate, including the ability to do so online without the need to call customer service multiple times as they need to do today. Finally, we proposed some housekeeping, adding and removing definitions and other provisions as needed, and rearranging sections in order to improve clarity and readability of the regulations. I'll now provide an overview of the public comments we received and our responses to. After we released the proposed regulations for public comment, after the board voted in October, we received written comments and oral testimony from 4 commenters, including 2 from our consumer advocacy organizations and 2 from carriers. We really appreciated the thoughtful and detailed review that these commenters gave to our proposed amendments. As a result of these comments, we made a variety of changes, although none materially changed the proposed regulations that the board approved in October. Specifically, we clarified that reinstatement requests must be made within particular timeframes. We added a number of cross-references to federal regulations. We modified 2 definitions. We addressed rescission of coverage in the event of fraud. We noted that there's more than one payment method that will be made available to members. We clarified standards for hearing decisions and dental lockout provisions. We added a section on authorized representatives for non-group applicants and members. I will now turn to the specific comments we received in our proposed response. 3 commenters expressed general support for expanding the regulations to include all Health Connector programs, which we appreciate. One commenter asked that we codify in the regulations the location of sub-regulatory guidance. We declined to adopt that request because the location of sub-regulatory guidance is subject to change, and we didn't want to restrict where that guidance may be posted by codifying it in regulation. For reference, our guidance is posted on the Health Connector website, which includes all of our operational policies. We had several comments regarding defined terms. One commenter asked that we add cross-references to federal law and regulation for the definition of advanced premium tax credit and household income. We didn't take action on that request since those definitions already include cross-references to federal law. This commenter also asked about appeal representatives and asked that we include attorneys or non-attorneys acting under an attorney's supervision in that definition. We agreed with that suggestion and updated the definition. This commenter also asked more generally about authorized representatives. The Health Connector shares its authorized representative form with Mass Health, which includes various mechanisms for designating an authorized representative who is empowered to receive notices and make decisions about an individual's application. In order to clarify this, we added a new section to the regulations stating that we rely on the same authority as Mass Health in its regulations for authorized representatives. The second commenter asked that the definition of connector program be expanded to include dental plans. We agreed and have modified the definition by adding dental plans to it. One commenter stated that the regulatory structure used to set forth eligibility for Health Connector programs was confusing. We do acknowledge that there are multiple ways to draft these eligibility provisions, but we declined to restructure them in order to avoid excessive disruption to the current regulation framework, and because we do believe that the current structure is accurate. This commenter also requested that we define the term lawfully present as it is used in the eligibility section. In response, we have added a cross-reference to the federal regulation that defines lawfully present. Another comment suggested that we replace the word member, which is not a defined term, with enrollee in the eligibility section. We agree that member is not the best word, but these provisions only describe rules for eligibility, which apply to those who are enrolled or those who may not be enrolled. So we instead substituted in the defined term eligible individual. This was just a technical correction. One commenter requested that we modify the eligibility provisions for ConnectorCare to include that there is a requirement that an individual enroll in a ConnectorCare plan in order to be eligible for it. And also that we modify the eligibility provisions regarding Health Connector plans with APTC to address situations where individuals do not receive APTC, but later claim PTC upon filing a federal income tax return. We declined to make edits based on this comment. First, as is true for any connector program, eligibility for ConnectorCare is not predicated on future enrollment, and therefore it is not appropriate to include enrollment as an eligibility factor. Further, regarding tax filers who claim PTC without having first received APTC, that scenario is governed solely by federal law and processes, and therefore we decline to address it in our regulations, which focus solely on how the Health Connector administers its programs. Two commenters requested that the Health Connector modify the regulatory requirement for the Health Connector to always offer at least one no premium plan for plan types 1 and 2A in order to require at least 2 premium free plans. While we are committed to making available as many affordable plan options as possible to our members, including those in plan types 1 and 2A, we did not adopt this recommendation because we did not originally propose to amend this portion of the regulations, and therefore it is not within the scope of what we may change upon finalizing the regulations. Please do note that staff remain committed to affordability and will continue to emphasize access to affordable plans as part of the annual seal of approval process.
And Andrew, on that one, the board could put out a subsequent draft regulation that did that, but it was because it wasn't in that it goes beyond the scope of what we put out for review. Is that the basic?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. One commenter requested that we provide greater detail around how we use third-party data sources to do eligibility verifications. So the Health Connector follows the federal regulations governing electronic verifications, which are extensive and complicated. We did not think it was necessary or appropriate to attempt to reproduce those federal rules in these regulations. However, we did add in cross-references to appropriate sections, incorporating more explicitly the federal rules by which we operate. One commenter suggested that our proposed amendments regarding annual renewals did not reflect the Health Connector's current policy nor federal rules regarding annual renewals. We reviewed these provisions with this comment in mind, but we were unable to identify any inconsistencies between the proposed amendments in either current Health Connector practice or federal rules. We therefore did not make material changes to the section regarding renewals, but we did add a cross-reference to the federal regulations regarding annual renewals. Another commenter requested clarification on when a mid-year redetermination of eligibility would result in a mid-year enrollment. Our response is that when there is an eligibility change mid-year, including where an individual reports a change or another process such as verifications processing results in a change, that may result in a new enrollment or a change in enrollment. Two commenters requested that we define a timeliness standard by which individuals must receive certain notices. We agree with the importance of providing timely notice, which is required by federal regulations. However, given the complexity of circumstances in which an individual must receive notice, and further, given the need to comply with federal eligibility change timelines, we do not believe we are able to provide a single uniform standard for timeliness for all notices. Among the changes we proposed in October was one designed to resolve a potential ambiguity in the regulations, which created a potential conflict with federal rules regarding eligibility effective dates. The system currently operates in a manner compliant with those federal rules, and the proposed amendments resolve the ambiguity such that the regulations are now also more clearly consistent with those federal rules. One commenter identified an inconsistency between the proposed amendments around when an eligibility change would be effective. We agreed and have resolved the inconsistency, again, consistent with federal law, which requires that eligibility changes be effective based on the date of the eligibility notice. A third commenter expressed concern about the eligibility effective date provisions not accounting for scenarios of fraud, since they are only prospective, and fraud may give rise to a retroactive termination. We agreed that fraud and rescission are important concepts to reflect in the regulations, but since those issues are not ones affecting eligibility per se, we declined to make changes to the section regarding eligibility effective dates. Instead, we updated other provisions already addressing fraud to make clear that we will also perform rescissions, which are retroactive in the event of fraud and consistent with federal law. With regard to applicant and enrollee responsibilities, we received 3 comments. The first suggested that the Health Connector retroactively terminate an individual who delayed reporting a change in circumstances that made them ineligible for coverage, thus disincentivizing members from withholding updates. However, this kind of consequence is not contemplated by federal regulations, so we did not adopt it. We would note that we do encourage and remind members to make updates throughout the year, and we conduct other program integrity activities like periodic data matching and a residency validation program with carriers to make sure that eligibility data is as up to date as possible. Second comment requested clarification on why we removed a provision related to third-party liability. This fell under our cleanup category of changes, as that section was carried over from our pre-ACA Commonwealth Care regulations and is no longer relevant now that our plans are in the merged market. The third comment was a request for clarification on changes we made to reporting changes. We note that the change from 60 to 30 days is for consistency with federal regulations, and we removed the phrase "as soon as possible" from this section, not because we don't think it's important to report changes right away, but because it could leave ambiguity suggesting that reporting changes after 30 days might be okay. This commenter also asked why we added immigration status to the list of types of changes that members must report. And we clarify here that we expanded the list to be consistent with federal eligibility factors, of which immigration status is one. Regarding special enrollment periods, we received generally supportive comments from 2 commenters, one of whom suggested we add language specifically citing the Office of Patient Protection's waiver regulations, which we did. We received 1 comment about payment methods, suggesting that we expand the language that stated we would establish at least 1 convenient payment method because a variety of payment method options can facilitate continued enrollment among members. To that point, we changed the text of the regulations to say multiple rather than at least 1. We also received a comment appreciating the continued availability of premium hardship waivers and the clarifications that we added around them. We received 2 comments related to reinstatements. The first requested clarification about how the changes to the reinstatement section of the regulations would play out in practice. We note that our intention is to use the flexibility newly included in the regulations to align the due date for reinstatement payments with the due date for new and ongoing coverage in order to streamline the process for members and customer service agents. A second commenter was concerned that the changes to the reinstatement language could allow for adverse selection if individuals waited to reinstate coverage until they had a health need. We added some clarifying language to the final rule that individuals must still request and pay for reinstatement in a timely fashion in order to effectuate the reinstatement. It's not open-ended. One commenter suggested that we add in provisions to address a situation in which a Health Connector for Business enrollee lost coverage due to employer non-payment, which would allow such enrollee to enroll in a non-group plan without a gap in coverage. We declined to adopt this suggestion because the current regulatory framework, which requires carriers to offer transitional coverage to such enrollees, and which results in a special enrollment period for non-group Health Connector plans, means that individuals had access to seamless coverage when their employer plan is terminated for non-payment. We are not aware of any gaps for individuals in that situation. One commenter supported the addition to the list of appealable actions of certain additional actions but requested that appealable actions not be limited to only those listed. We declined to adopt this provision because while any person may request an appeal for any reason, what constitutes a valid appeal is limited by those rights set forth in law and which are now reflected in these regulations. One commenter recommended including a specific time frame for acknowledging appeals requests in writing. We declined to make changes based on this comment because the federal regulations which govern our appeals and which the regulations now cross-reference already include the requirement to send such an acknowledgement. This commenter also expressed concern about our proposed language permitting the dismissal of an appeal where an appellant dies and requested the ability for the spouse to continue the appeal. Again, we did not make any changes based on this comment because our proposed text comes from federal regulations which permit duly authorized parties, including surviving spouses, to continue the appeals of the deceased appellant. Two commenters opposed language requiring hearing officers to apply law consistent with the Health Connector's interpretation if an appellant challenged the legality of the law or regulation in the context of an appeal. Based on this comment and based on the bedrock principle of that consistent application of the law is necessary for a fair appeals process, we amended this language to clarify that interpretations of law, which hearing officers are required to apply, must be in Health Connector rules and regulations or other written guidance. Finally, one commenter proposed clarification on provisions regarding dental waiting and lockout periods. In response, the Health Connector added language to clarify that such waiting and lockout periods are permissible so long as they are otherwise consistent with applicable law. I will pause here and see if there are any questions about the comments we received or our responses.
Andrew, the one comment I want to make is that this is the kind of very careful and painstaking work that is not glamorous and it doesn't get a lot of headlines, but it is absolutely critically important to the transparent and the fair and the smooth operation of our programs. So I just want to thank you for all of the, obvious care that you took in the original draft, in looking so carefully at all the comments and in making the changes and in telling us about them. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, Andrew, I would echo what Nancy just said. I found your presentation today and also the summary write-up hard copy to be very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I would thank you as well and echo those sentiments. It's very meticulous work and I spend a lot of time with regulations. I know how painstaking it can be and you did an excellent job here. I also appreciate the collaboration with my office and I know that Secretary Heffernan found it very helpful as well. So thank you for doing such a careful job here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Great. Any other questions?
There's not a quiz on them now.
Sorry?
I was saying I was hoping there wasn't going to be a quiz.
That's after the board meeting, Nancy.
Only if it's open book.
Yeah.
Exactly. And untimed.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I can move on now to our next steps for finalizing, just to let the board know what the calendar looks like. So as you can see here, this timeline shows our activities to date. We proposed the amendments and received public comment last fall. And if today the board approves these final amendments, we will file the final regulations with the Secretary of the Commonwealth tomorrow. The regulations will be published in the next Massachusetts Register on May 29, and that will be the day they become effective. So if there are no other questions, we can move on to the vote.
Great. Hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve the program regulation amendments?
So moved.
All right, let's go through the roll call. Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Fay Ruth,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Cassandra,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Lou,
Yes.
Dimitri,
Yes.
Lauren, yes, Nancy,
Yes.
and Rena.
Yes.
All right. The motion carries and the amendments are approved. And in the interest of time, I unfortunately do have to leave I have a conflict at 10:30, so I would like to, so that I don't have to interrupt the next presentation, pass the baton to the Vice Chair, Michael Chernew, so that he can finish out the meeting.
Yes, I am not the one to finish out the meeting, but I am the one to say that the final item on the agenda is an update on the customer experience project that's going to be presented by Vicki and Michael. So, Vicki and Michael.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay, Michael has, great. Okay, good morning. Michael and I'll be providing an update as to the progress of the customer experience project against our go live date of July 6th. And Michael, do you have our slides by any chance?
Yeah, Vicki, I'm actually having a technical issue that's not allowing me to share. So if I can just ask if Drew is on, maybe he can present those.
Sure, just give me a minute.
Great. Okay, so we're going to provide you a status of cutover planning, the enrollment and billing installation, our mailroom transition, and the contact center implementation. And then we'll close the presentation covering the risks we're tracking and managing closely. So let's give a second for the slides.
It might be that the previous person has to relinquish their sharing to allow a new person to share.
Okay, Andrew?
No, it's because I installed an update that it wants me to reboot Zoom to start. So
I didn't anticipate that.
Okay. Well, you know what? We can just talk through them. You received them. Maybe just talk about the board received these in advance. So you'll follow along until we get this. Oh, Terry, thank you. All right. Terry, can you advance to the agenda, please? Okay. So this is what we're going to talk about. And if you move to the next slide, please. Next slide. Michael's going to take you through the project schedule, cutover, and enrollment and billing, and then I'll pick up after that. Michael, I'm going to turn it to you.
Great, thank you, Vicki. Good morning, everyone. So as Louis and Vicki mentioned, we are continuing to march towards July 6th go live for both the enrollment and premium billing and contact center implementations. We modified the go live date in February, originally to allow ourselves more time for end-to-end testing. But it's also provided some other benefits. We can now leverage a long holiday weekend for cutover. And based on the calendar, June's month-end processing by NTT can run as scheduled without modification. Our implementation has had some impacts due to COVID-19. The transition to remote work for all project participants, including connector staff and vendors, did cause some delays in testing, as well as some shifts to our interim project schedule. And Vicki will discuss more about this shortly, but it also triggered us to modify our implementation date for mailroom and our rethinking of staffing for the contact center and walk-in centers. Move to the next slide. As we continue to look towards July 6th, we're actively planning our detailed cutover activities. The hour-by-hour cutover plan is documented and currently under review by all parties. In parallel, operational readiness is underway, which will confirm policies, procedures, and training are in place. And finally, a formal submission has been made to CMS requesting that Sophion and Faneuil be included in our footprint. Next slide. Next slide. Thanks. We continue to make progress with the enrollment and premium billing implementation with Sophion. As a reminder, this also includes the member portal, notice generation, and notice fulfillment. End-to-end testing and business validation are nearing completion. Our intention is that all identified critical issues needed for day one are resolved prior to go live. We've been targeting a functional system lockdown of Friday, May 15th, which is tomorrow. This lockdown will freeze the code that will be deployed into production, and any new or carryover activity or any carryover issues that need resolution will be treated as a change controlled hotfix. As of this morning, we have a few activities still outstanding for resolution and validation, which may delay our lockdown slightly. We will evaluate tomorrow, but we plan to lock down shortly, and we're building a schedule for post-lockdown hotfix as well as tracking all remaining open items. We have identified a few critical issues related to renewals that are not needed until open enrollment. Those issues will be resolved in conjunction with the next HICS R21 release, which is scheduled to deploy in late July. And any non-critical issue that's been identified and not yet resolved will be managed through our warranty period. A couple of items that have some specific focus because they rely on third parties include lockbox testing with Bank of America, which is scheduled to wrap up this week, and some EDI changes affecting the 820 and the 834 audit files, which will be tested with carriers in June. In addition, data conversion continues to be tested in preparation for our full production load at the beginning of June, and performance testing is underway. Are there any questions? And I'll pass it to you, Vicki.
Okay, next slides, please. Next one. Okay, so the Electronic Data Management Center in New Bedford will be the location of our new mailroom, and it will be effective on Monday. We continue to work closely with our colleagues at Mass Health and NTT and thank them for their help in making this transition. Preparations are underway for the cutover this weekend. Development and testing work has finished. The new address has been added to notices. Assisters and navigators trained, and this weekend our website will be updated with the new address. We have checkpoints built into the weekend and are prepared to roll back if necessary, but our plans now are to be live in the new location as of Monday. Next slide, please. Next. So with Daniel and the contact center, the focus of the work is to finalize the configuration of the IVR. This work was targeted to be done this week for system lockdown, but it is going to roll into the beginning of next week. And while it is past the original lockdown date of tomorrow, we have the ability to use a buffer in the schedule and are confident this work will be concluded in a timely manner. People are testing as we speak. For staffing and recruiting, we're beginning and it's being monitored closely. Given the current economic environment, we will have the ability to draw from a deep and wide pool to hire qualified candidates in the number to support our membership. Regards to walk-in centers, the negotiation of the leases is finalized. However, due to COVID-19, plans to reopen the walk-in centers are fluid at the moment. We'll need to assess what changes to the physical plant and operational processes need to be made in order to reopen safely. Items under consideration are the installation of splash shields, for instance, reconfiguration to allow for greater social distancing, and moving to an appointment-based system only. Next, please. COVID-19 also, was there a question?
Yes, just a quick question, Vicki. I wanted to know what the strategy was moving forward with regard to post-COVID-19 normalcy, whether or not we're looking at incorporating additional technology into our services to provide an additional modality for people to have walk-in centers in addition to just the physical plants.
So we are going to be, we already have document upload, Dimitri. So that's the two main reasons people go to the walk-in centers are to pay and to drop off documents. So we have put in place document upload that came last summer. So we've been tracking that and trying to really push a message that you don't have to go to a walk-in center to drop off documents. And in our new world, we will have check by phone. So that way that people that are dropping off physical checks can do that over the telephone, which we think will help decrease traffic in the walk-in centers. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I just want to make sure that I know all the great work that you're doing. I want to make sure that we're promoting those things as a safe way that we want to make sure that we can interact with our constituents and that we are aware of the situations that they're in, and we do have all these tools available.
Yes, so we've been closed now for since March. So we have been heavily promoting them now because the walk-in centers are closed. We still do pick up the mail if people drop off checks, but we have been really trying to push that you don't need to go to a walk-in center. But I appreciate, you know, that's the same thoughts about reopening, right? We want to do it safely, both for our members and our staff. Okay, could I have the next slide? Whoops, stay on this slide, 12. So that's to your other point, Dimitri. COVID-19 required Faneuil to completely remodel their proposed operating model for us in general. At the moment, plans are for 100% remote workforce at the time we go live on July 6th. And to aid in this transition, Faneuil engaged Omni Consulting and hired 2 permanent leaders that are working on our account who are experienced in work from home operations. They were 100% brick and mortar before. We're going to go live now 100% remote. And those work from home folks have helped us retool and get our processes in place across the continuum, from recruitment remote to skills assessment, training, and then ongoing remote workforce management. So Faneuil right now is prepared to go live and meet the needs of our program and members with 100% remote workforce. And we will have discussions with them regards when to move back to brick and mortar and what mix of remote versus brick and mortar staff we should have as the circumstances evolve and are known under COVID-19. So that is a major change that we've adapted to, but are adapting well. So any questions on that?
Yeah, this is Nancy. Just something I hadn't really thought about, but where we contract with vendors who have workforce in states other than Massachusetts, and states taking such widely divergent approaches to unlocking down to a variety of public health measures, what's our approach going to be with Faneuil and maybe other vendors that have workers who are doing work for us in states that are adopting policies that are inconsistent with what we in Massachusetts think is safe practice?
Nancy, on that one, I would say insofar as they are a subcontractor to us, I would like us to specify the times and places at which work from home becomes brick and mortar. I don't want it to be like a Kentucky center deciding what Kentucky's going to do versus Connecticut or you know, I think we will work with Faneuil. We'll all be looking at various guidance, but I think that is Connector's to call.
Agreed.
Okay, that's very much what I hoped. That's what I hoped you were going to say. I mean, it would trouble me deeply if we had people doing work for us who were being required to do things that we don't think in Massachusetts are safe for the workers or for the general public. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Okay, could you move on to the risk slide, please? Thank you. So the project leadership team is tracking and managing a set of risks for go live. We've touched on many of these already throughout the presentation, and we believe we have mitigation plans in place for each of them. And our efforts remain focused on system lockdown, finalizing the day-by-day and minute-by-minute cutover plan with both our current and future vendors, and completing the staffing of the call center and going live on July 6th. So that's our slides. Please let me know if you have any further questions. All right, I will turn it back.
I think Vicki, just an observation that it seems miraculous to me that this is on schedule as well as it is, and I know it reflects enormous work again by everybody. So bravo. It's really very impressive, and thank you.
I could not agree more. I am astounded. I would have put this good news at like a 15% probability we could have got to here. So that's great. Kudos to everybody involved. Are there any other any other questions in general? Oh, is that a little clap emoji, Nancy? Do we have to take a special Nancy Zoom course? And by the way, I don't see any amazing backgrounds people are using. I haven't been able to get that to work. In any case.
All right, challenged in that way. Please
Yeah.
keep, but I will start putting backgrounds up if you want to see.
Here you go. I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn if there are no other questions.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Now, I don't have a list of everybody, but I have all of the pictures. See how I can do this. Gary?
Yes.
Maybe I don't have them all. So someone's gonna have to make sure I get everybody.
Michael, you don't have all the pictures. I don't think my camera is on.
Okay, well then vote, Dimitri.
I'll go with aye.
Okay. Now you're all moving around and I'm getting a headache.
So, Michael, would it help if Kathy did the vote roll?
If Kathy has a list of the people to vote, that would help.
I sure do.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay.
Oh, Michael, I can tell you were just used to having TAs, aren't you?
I have not taught on Zoom, that's true. And when someone says something, all the pictures shift around. So I can see Mark, but Kathy, why don't you go do this?
All right, my pleasure. Commissioner,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes, please.
Fay Ruth,
Yes, thank you.
Mark,
Yes.
Cassandra,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Lou,
Yes.
Dimitri,
Yeah.
Nancy,
Yes.
Rena. Rena?
Rena
Yes.
nodded her assent.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, no, I thought I was on, I'm not on mute. I must.
No, you're good.
Okay.
We're all good. So anyway, on behalf of Secretary Sutters and everyone else, and I'll just say thank you all. It is amazing what's happening. Hopefully we'll see each other soon. But you guys are doing just tremendous work in the most difficult of circumstances. So thank you all.
You're here to that. Thank you.
We now stand up.
Thank you.
So much for
Bye-bye.
our board support.